Hello, good morning. It's so nice to see all of you this morning. Welcome, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. This Startup Grind is brought to you by Spark Center in partnership with Launch Lab in Fellow, as well as the Regional Innovation Center in Kingston. I'm Kerri King, and I'm going to be joining you as the moderator for the discussion this morning. Please bear with me. It's my first time using this new platform, and I actually thank Kaylee Summers so much for helping get things set up for us this morning. Super excited about the discussion that we're going to have. I guess I just want to mention before we get started, feel free to introduce yourselves in a discussion along the chat. Tell us who you are. You can tell us where you're from. You can tell us, maybe you can share your LinkedIn profiles with us, your social handles, and feel free to stay engaged, use the chat, and we can sort of stay connected that way throughout the discussion. So those of you who don't know me, Kerri King, and I've just actually launched my own consulting company, sort of have been a serial entrepreneur, and started off with my first business when I was 25 years old in the nightclub and concert and production industry, and then went into corporate communications working for Rogers Group of companies. And then I spent about 9 or 10 years in economic development, working for the region of Durham in economic development and tourism, and learned a lot of things, certainly from that sector, certainly as an entrepreneur coming into government. It was a great learning experience. I did get my international designation. So that was sort of a great stint. And then I spent the last 5 years working for Station Gallery, almost 6 years as the CEO of Station Gallery, running the public art gallery in Whitby. So now back to starting up my own business again in consulting. It's certainly been an exciting time for me, and really timely that I have an opportunity to connect with all of you today. I'm super excited to have an opportunity this morning to chat with Katie Zeppieri. Many of you would know her from Spark Center, but I'll just share a little bit about her background. Katie is one of today's leading voices and thought leaders on branding and empowerment. She's a social entrepreneur, marketing and PR specialist, author, and two-time TEDx speaker. Katie is the founder and CEO of Girl Talk Speakers Bureau, and she's also the creator of Girl Talk Day, Canada's largest girl empowerment event, which brought together over 1,000 girls ages 11 to 18 for an annual pep rally. And that event impacted over 15,000 girls. So she's done some amazing work. She's featured all over media, CTV, CP24, and she, like myself, she won a Women of Distinction Award, which is a huge honor. And as well, she won the Governor General's Caring Canadian Award. So we're really, really fortunate to have somebody of this caliber here to share a few minutes with us. So with that, I'd like to welcome Katie onto the stage to join me and have a little discussion.
Hi, Kerri.
How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for that very kind introduction.
Oh, my pleasure. It's amazing to see what you've done in your short lifetime. I know for me, I'm, entering in my 50s now, and to see what you've done in such a short time is really impressive. So it's an honor to speak with you today.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Same.
Cool. So I just thought I would sort of kick it off and just ask you a little bit about the Girl Talk and what got you started with that. I found that really interesting, that you were sort of motivated to start that whole event, and sort of what brought you into it.
Yeah, I think honestly, the roots of my sort of entrepreneurship journey kind of began with activism. And
Okay.
I feel like in high school, I kind of initially found my voice. We had a very forward-thinking principal who
Okay.
shaped the whole culture of the way that we thought about things. And so he brought in this organization. It was really, we created it. He created it. It was Culture of Peace, and it had come from
Oh,
like this
okay.
other school, and it was it was meant to be like this human rights sort of centered um, chapter, if you will, where students could come and be involved in a wide range of activism campaigns. So there was, you know, Amnesty International was like an offset that you could do. There was sort of like this environmental club. There was violence against women. There was just so many different aspects of this culture of peace. And I really like found my voice in that. I really recognized that, you know, this was a way to sort of give back. This was a way to get involved. This was a way to not feel so hopeless. Like, you know, there's things happening in the world and there's nothing I can do about it because I'm this age or live here. Like, no, there are things that you can do about it, you know? And I think just getting involved and starting to lead campaigns and run conferences was sort of this like entry point for me into like, okay, I can use the talents that I have and the gifts that I have to draw attention to causes that I'm passionate about. And so that was the root and that was the heart. And one of the key things for me was empowering young people who had been bullied. Like that was such a
Okay.
soft spot for me. It was something, bullying was something that I experienced quite terribly for 7 years. And my way of dealing with that was, and coping with that was actually to help someone else, someone who is coming up, and maybe just letting them know like you're going to get through this, and there's so much that you have to look forward to, and all of these really empowering messages. And so that was the root, Kerri. Like
Oh,
I
wow.
started speaking at schools, and that led to me kind of just following feedback, and girls in particular would come up to me and say they resonated with parts of my story about self-esteem and body image. And so that's
Mhm.
where that little idea came from, to start Girl Talk. And it started with a one-day conference in Oshawa at the embassy church.
Okay, good. Oh,
And
Pastor Schneider, I love
Pastor,
him.
he was a huge supporter of
Yeah.
me and of our events. And it was this little idea that I kind of put out, and we had 700 people show up to our first ever Girl Talk Day event there. And that was the beginning for me.
So, and that was the Girl Talk Day. Now, what about the Together We Rise? Like that's is that was that part of it, or
Together
how
Together We
yeah.
Rise is a recent project. I just actually started that during COVID. So it was
Okay.
An Instagram live show that basically the week after everything shut down for COVID and we were all kind of at home, I was like, I got to do something. Like all my events
Okay. So
canceled. All
it wasn't the Girl Talk Day that kind of drove you to do the Together We Rise. It was just sort of in response to the pandemic and just people being at home and stuck there, and it
exactly.
gave you a chance to connect with people and start sharing. So you just kind of proactively decided to go about and do that.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
that's kind
cool.
of been. Oh, it's nice to see the comments. Hi
Oh,
guys, I'm
yeah, I can't see the
link here.
comments for some reason. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here.
There's the two tabs there. So there's the comments
Okay.
section. Anyway, it's so nice
Oh,
to
I can
see.
see it now. I can see the, well, I can see the private chat. I can see the comments. Yay! Oh, good. I can see it. Nice. Sorry, bear with me, guys. It's as I said, this is my first time on this platform. So this is great to see everybody kind of jumping in. That's great. Awesome. Oh, Karen Smith's on there. Hi, Karen. Awesome. So, so for Together Rewise, I think I actually had a chance to see one of your interviews, and I think you touched on the notion, like the idea of confidence. And I think when I hear about the fact that you were bullied in high school and just trying to find your voice after sort of going through that, where did you find the confidence to be able to sort of move past that element of fear and find, your voice and feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, I think confidence is sort of an ongoing journey. It there's different things in life that happen to us that can knock our confidence and can sort of
Hmm.
change the way that we look at ourselves. But I think for me, I was very first blessed to have like a family that really emphasized this, you are valuable regardless of anything that happens to you, regardless of what people may say to you. Like, you have like inherent worth and value. And that just initial message was the foundation for everything. But
Right.
I think you don't wake up one day being confident. And so when I'm like speaking and when I'm working with youth and adults, it's essentially the message of, what can I do with what I have,
Hmm.
where I am today, to build towards the person that I want to become in the future. And I think, like, you don't just wake up sort of in your dream life. And I talk about this frequently. You have to be building and taking the steps to get there. So if you're not yet where you'd like to be, say with your business or maybe an aspect or a goal in your personal life, but you're taking steps to get there, you're
Hmm.
still going to have a sense of confidence because you're
Hmm.
not sitting back on those things. You're actually taking action. And that's really how I kind of just work to develop and get through even the difficult times. I focused on what I can do. Okay. I can't control, what people are saying. And
Yeah.
what people may think, but I can control, what I do about it. I can use my voice to help impact other people. I can help speak up for other people. I can lead campaigns. And it's like almost like a bit of a domino effect. Like, once you put yourself out there and see, wow, here's proof of what I can do, it
Hmm.
builds. They're little building blocks that help you, get to the next goal and the next goal and the next goal.
Absolutely. I found even throughout the pandemic, when people weren't sure, I think when people are transitioning, whether the change is like a personal change or a career change, sometimes we just have to sort of pause and take a breath and go back to the basic things. And for me, it was, every day during the pandemic, just do your workout or do your yoga as a starting place, and just go back to those basic sort of rituals and practices that keep you grounded. And even if you're not sure what the next step is, make sure you have those disciplines. And sometimes it's just a matter of cleaning up your space around you, and just coming from a place of clarity. And I know, I mean, coming from the arts industry, I think with artists, sometimes they or even writers, they might have writer's block. And sometimes, I've heard of artists saying, you know what, I just go into my studio when I'm not sure where to go, and I just start cleaning up, and I just clean up my messes, and then next I've got a blank canvas and I can start creating. And I think life, I learned so much about life from artists in that sense, because I think a lot of times people are stuck. But it's really inspiring, Katie, to see the way you've, like taken for that example with Together We Rise, and just sort of jumped into it, and not being afraid to put yourself out there, and being really, really comfortable. Do you find it challenging some days, like to put your makeup on and get out there and get on TV? And like, how do you get past that?
How do you get past, like, just sort of.
That, like, maybe, just being nervous about it, or how do you, for people that aren't comfortable maybe putting themselves out there?
Yeah, like, I mean, anytime, um, in order to get to the next level of where you're looking to go, you cannot keep repeating the same actions that you're doing. Like, to
Right.
get to
Yeah.
the next level, to get to the next goal, to get to the next milestone, it involves some sort of change. Like, it's going to involve a change of action. And that can be scary. It can be terrifying. But I really just believe that I would much rather try and not have something work out, get a no, it's not my best. I would much rather be the type of person who tries than to be somebody who has like ideas of what I'd like to do, but just sits on them. Like, I can't live with that.
Yeah.
I can live with a no, because you just kind of develop. And this is, I found, was really encouraging for me and to, other entrepreneurs on here and people in general. Like, I mean, I think it's good to remember that and almost repeat to yourself, which is one of the things that I do. Like, if it's not this, it'll be something else. And,
Right.
if this is meant for me, it's going to happen. And if it's not meant for me, it's not going to happen. And that's okay, because it's kind of taking me like a step closer to finding the thing that is meant for
Right.
me, or the right opportunity, or the right connection. And so that mindset, like as soon as you shift from feeling like, oh gosh, like if I don't get this, it's over. If I don't get this
Right.
opportunity, clearly, if I don't make this sale, clearly like my business, it's no good. Like I'm no good. Instead of going to those places, you actually just focus on, you know what, I'm going to put my all into this. But if this doesn't work out exactly how I'm thinking, I'm going to move somewhere else. And one of the words that I use, and I think has been a quality that's been helpful to me, is being nimble. Like, don't be so rigid, right? Like, you cannot be too rigid, because even, when you're creating a product or a service and you're putting it out into the market, like, the first thing that you put out is almost always not the final product and the final thing that you're, selling. I was actually just listening to a podcast, Guy Raz, how I built this, and I was listening to the story of MailChimp recently, and
Okay.
even there, the team, the founders of MailChimp, set out to have a web design business. That was where they started. That's what they thought was going to be their bread and butter. But through a series of feedback and testing, they got on this idea, oh, hey, maybe email campaigns could be really cool. And it just went from there. So you almost like, you do yourself a disservice by not trying the idea, by not putting it out there, by not putting yourself out there. If you do that, if you put yourself out, you put your idea into the world, at least you're going to get some feedback. You're going to see what happens. Either it resonates or it doesn't resonate, but at least it's going to give you some direction. It's going to help propel you forward. Even if it doesn't feel like it, even if it's a no, you're still moving forward. And so when you have that kind of mindset, it makes the failures less personal. It's kind of part of a bigger picture and part of a bigger journey.
Oh, thanks for sharing that, Katie. I noticed that Sue Sutcliffe's commenting, saying, awesome story. And it's true. Like, it can be so inspiring and motivating to hear not only people's successes, but their challenges, and what, the things that may make people hesitate to look toward an opportunity. And I know a big part for you of promoting your business is, building relationships with the media, and that must be challenging as well, because you're putting yourself out there, and that requires confidence. How have you done that over the years? When I look at your bio and see all the coverage you've had, is it because that sort of, you've created this momentum and they've come to you, or are you actively reaching out to members of the media and building rapport with them as a strategic sort of approach?
My nickname on Instagram that I've kind of dubbed now, and I'm building on it, is I'm Katie, your hype girl.
Okay, yeah.
I help people and brands build hype.
Yeah.
And how I've kind of come to this place now, I run a marketing agency. We do PR work for clients. I recognize starting out, and I had my eye on media because, like, I studied radio and television broadcasting. I thought for sure I was going to go and become like, I wanted to become a television personality at the time. And so I kind of had that track. Like, I knew the power of media. I knew that if you were on camera, people would listen to what you had to say. It gave you this credibility. It gave you a platform with which you could do things with. So I had that in my mind. And so what came naturally to me, I think, was building a personal brand. And I really think that all people need a personal brand. And what I mean by that is, your personal brand is thinking about yourself like you would a business, like you would any other, corporate brand. It's thinking, what are the messages that I am telling the world about myself, largely in a professional sense. LinkedIn's a perfect example of this. LinkedIn is basically, putting your resume out there. It's sort of your introduction as to who you are. It really captures the essence of you as a personal brand. What are the experiences that you've had? What have you done? How have you grown in those roles? What are you posting about? What do you like? What do you comment on? All of that is sort of representing you. And when you start to think about yourself as a brand, it helps you make more strategic decisions about how you communicate, and how you represent yourself, and how you dress, and the connections that make sense for you and that fit you. And I feel like I kind of understood that. I didn't think about it that way. I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm building a personal brand, but I
Mm-hmm.
understood that if I wanted to get credibility, I was 22 when I incorporated my first business. Like, who's going to take the 22-year-old seriously? I thought at the time. I felt like a way of building some credibility was to get some coverage and start getting, keywords that I wanted to be associated with me. Like when people think of empowerment, I want them to think of me. When they think
Right.
of leadership, I want them to think of me. And great ways of doing this is obviously getting press coverage. So
Right.
to answer
Oh,
the question
cool.
more specifically, I hustled, I pitched, I reached out, I used my network anytime I could make a connection. I did. I was bold. I would ask a VP when I was at an event of, it was then Astral, it's now Bell. How do I become an on-air personality? Like, how do I go
Yeah.
about doing it? Like, I would ask that question. And actually, it was because of that ask that she connected me with a producer at News Talk 1010, and they brought me on as a guest. I got to go be a guest on the show. They were looking for panelists. And that first day that I was on the show, I prepped and I tried to bring my A game. And from that first opportunity, I actually got asked to be a regular panelist on the show weekly. So for about 3 years, I would go down to Toronto, and Monday mornings, I was on a panel for 1 hour with some really qualified, exceptionally talented people, lawyers and business owners, and, people who worked in the government, and of course, the host, Jerry Agar. And I got to debate politics and world issues and current events for that 1 hour. And like, that was
Wow.
a huge training in how to speak about tough things. That was hard. I remember being like incredibly nervous about
Just
giving
getting
my
you out of your comfort zone, right? Like every Monday morning, making the trek in and doing that. That's fantastic.
yeah, and it built relationships. So, then it was Bell Media, and now I was connected to that network, and I was able to build on that. So we ended up and I ended up pitching Virgin Radio, was owned by Bell, and Chum 1045, and they came in as sponsors for our Girl Talk Empowerment Day event. So, I mean, to get started, for people who are looking to get started, like, start with even local media, local
Right.
press, because once you get one opportunity, it's much easier to get the second, and then the third, and then the fourth. It's building on top of each other. and
Right.
and really, when you're pitching yourself, you want to be thinking what's in it for them, not
Right.
what's in it for you, because everybody wants the interview, right? Everybody wants the
Right.
feature. So it's does you a disservice to just kind of assume that they are going to think you're the most amazing person ever. They might not. Right off the bat, right? They might not. It's
Yes.
a lot better if you've taken the time to understand what it is that they're looking for, right? So
Right.
if you're building like a company in a particular sector, a particular type, maybe it's, I don't know, a technology of some sort, maybe it's even more industry specific, like insurance technology, could be anything.
Right.
Looking for like a publication or a podcast that centers on that particular topic would be a much better sell when you say, this is what I think I can share with your audience. This is what I can teach your audience. X, Y, and Z. These are the points that I think I could bring. This is why I feel like I'd add value to your audience. Giving the pitches that you do from a place of, what am I doing for you, rather than, hey, can you do me a favor? Going to
Right.
completely change the game in terms of getting responses back.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes for media and it goes for sponsorship development too. And, with that, on that note, I would like to actually thank some of the sponsors for the broadcast too, because I think I failed to do that in the beginning. I do want to recognize Spark Center's elite partners, MNP Insurance, Assurance and Accounting Services, Bearskin and Par LLP, Roughly Insurance, Finance Without Borders, Suresh Law and Professional Corporation, and Spark Innovations. And these organizations are the ones that are bringing these discussions to you. And it's great to see too, Katie, that there's people commenting in the chat. And I know Karen is mentioning about personal brands starting at a young age and the importance of, educating the youth on, not only, building, because I think kids, like my teenage kids are, really concerned with, how they appear on social, but I don't think they're thinking and making the connection between that and career. It's more like, how do I, connect with my circle, right? Of friends. But we've seen, over the years that, these social channels that we've embarked on have become sort of enmeshed in our career as well, in our career development. So how do we do that? When Karen's saying educate your teenagers on this, what advice would you have for, not only young girls, but in my case, young boys that are sort of getting onto these channels and building their brand in that way?
Well, I think personal branding can start quite young, and I don't think we need to necessarily sell it that way. Like, it might be a little odd to start talking, but basically, when your child or someone that you know is at the age where they're ready to start looking for employment, that's
Right.
probably a good time for them to start a LinkedIn page. And I think that's
Okay.
a really, really good place to start. I know, people used to think like LinkedIn's kind of like the one that we ignore, the social media network that we ignore, and maybe like teenagers don't think it's the cool one, right?
Right.
But it's expressing that, to me, resumes aren't going to be around much longer. Like, in the way that we think of resume and cover letter, like this
Hmm.
PDF, I honestly don't think in 5 years that's what we're going to be using for hiring purposes. I don't like that. Doesn't help me when I'm hiring.
Right.
I,
And
I'm totally going to look that person up. Like, I am going on their LinkedIn, because not
is that
only,
your first go-to, is LinkedIn?
for sure,
That
for
would be where you would go. Okay.
that would be where I would go, because not only can I see all the things that are going to be on this resume, but it's interactive, right? So if there's, when you have your work experience, you can put pictures, videos, links to articles demonstrating what you did at those roles. For me, I'm not interested in listings of where I've been and what I've done. I want to see proof of what you've
Right.
done, right? And so that LinkedIn's a great starting point. I can see if you've written any articles, if you've shared any articles there. What are the types of things that you're commenting on? I get a much better sense of who you are. And then I go even further on the internet, right? I can kind of see, do you have a website? Like, so I think it's really important to start building your digital footprint at a young age. So as soon as you're starting to look for a job, it's a great time to start with LinkedIn. And
Okay.
that's a good starting place to kind of build from there. And for everybody on here who's tuning in today, your LinkedIn is your first place to go when you're building your personal brand. Optimize it. In the same way that I was saying, here's all the features that you can do. Make sure that you spend the time to not only add descriptions for the work that you're doing, but also add some samples of your work, the links, the articles. I'm telling you, it takes a little bit of effort, an hour or two to kind of get it set up, but it makes a world of difference in terms of helping build your credibility. And you can start inserting some of those keywords that you want to be known for in the little about description, right? A little bit
Right.
about you in each of your work performance sections as well. It's a great starting place.
And I'm curious about, blogging and podcasting. I know that, podcasting is something you're familiar with. Is that, when people are putting out content like, personal blogs or starting their own podcast, do you see that as an opportunity to promote through LinkedIn as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
something I haven't done. So I have a blog. And I've just been doing it for years. Just wherever I travel, I like write about it and I do it for fun. And now it's become a way for me to just kind of express myself. But I've never really thought about adding that to LinkedIn. I just sort of think, well, I talk about personal things, but it's all part of the work that you create, right?
Yeah.
And and I think podcasting is something I'm new at. How do you recommend people get started, whether it's a blog or a podcast, in terms of topics or just putting themselves out there in that way?
So I'll just kind of build a little bit further on how I'd say I'd go about the personal branding, because it can feel
Okay,
overwhelming.
sure, sure.
I think it can feel overwhelming for people to say, like, okay, like I have to have all of these things, or I have to be in all of these places at once. You absolutely don't. And so if I were to kind of like paint an order, I would say
Hmm.
first would be LinkedIn is just a good place.
Right.
I'd also say your other social channels, right? You don't have to be everywhere. I'd say pick the channels that make most sense for you, for the demographic that you're speaking to, for the industry that you're speaking to. Some industries use certain channels more than others. So LinkedIn's a must, but then the others you can kind of pick, which ones make most sense. Make sure your bio's optimized. Make sure you have kind of like the key information and details there. These are the things, these are the initial touch points when somebody's searching for you that are going to come up. They're gonna Google you. LinkedIn comes up. They're gonna see some of the links to your other social pages. The other place that I go to look people up, to be honest, just because I use it so much and it fits my demographic of work, is Instagram. I
Right.
almost like an Instagram page before a website in many circumstances. So there are great ways to just kind of like ensure that you're speaking to what you want to be known for on those platforms. If you've got a personal page on like Facebook or Instagram where you kind of want to post like only family stuff or more personal things, I would say make that private
Okay.
and like either change your name to something that's like obviously a little bit more private, but your full name would be, in my opinion, should be like your public profile, the public way that you face the world. And I would make sure that it aligns with the professional types of messages that you want to put forward. So those are just
That's
some ways.
great advice, Katie. I should take that advice myself. That's
Yeah, because
fantastic.
I've tried to separate that as best as I can. When Facebook was a lot, I really don't use Facebook as much anymore, but it does make sense for some demographics and some industries for your business. But like I immediately changed my name to like my middle name, so it was like Katie middle name, and then I made a public page like with my full name, and because I know that people would search me on Google. And I want to make sure that I come up. And when that comes up, I don't want them to see, pictures of my personal life. I want
Right.
them to see what I'm doing to help, with my business. So
That's really great advice. That's really great advice. Thank you for that.
no problem. So that's kind of like your initial starting place. But to your point, from there, how do you continue to build your personal brand? For sure, content creation is another really great way to do that. And that could be making a YouTube video. There's so many different ways that you can create content. But essentially what that means is you are teaching people something. You are entertaining people, you are teaching people, you're informing people. It's going to make people want to listen to what you have to say because you're providing them with value. Those are great ways to reinforce your personal brand. If there's things that you want to be known for, you starting to share tips and advice and insight on those things helps build that presence. And do you see what we're starting to do here? It means that when people search for you, these things that you're doing or writing or you made a video or this, they're starting to be brought forward. You're starting to come up when people search you. That's what we want. We want your digital footprint to point to you, and that very quickly when somebody searches you, they could have an essence of who you are, what you're about, and how they could possibly work with you or use your product or your service. And so those are like some initial ways to kind of go about thinking. If it feels too cumbersome and onerous at the beginning to run your own podcast and run your own blog, it can be a lot of work, right? And I would say start by being a guest. Start by
Mhm.
looking for ways where you could pitch yourself to be on somebody else's podcast. Look for ways where you could contribute to someone else's blog. So instead of saying, I have to write a blog every week or 3 times a week or any of these things, if that feels like too much right away, I'm going to write a guest post for another blog and I'm going to kind of pitch that. Those are all easy ways because every time you're doing that, you are building this online presence and people might start and will start finding you based on all of these interactions. And then Kerri, to your point, I think like running your own podcast, running your own show, that's like that's like a higher level of, trying to build a brand because it's a much, much greater commitment. It's a very good one. But it's a much greater commitment. And at that point, there's so many how-to resources to help you get started. There's also companies and organizations that can even help you like with getting your podcast. If you're scared about the technical aspects or whatever it might be, don't worry because you can outsource that. You can get supports and people to help you
For all the technical
for the
elements. Yeah.
technical
Yep.
things.
Mhm.
Or just even getting them actually like posted and scheduled for you, which again can be a bit of a commitment.
Right. So Hossein is saying my full name is very common and there are many names exactly like his name. So, I guess that's where you can even come up with, like you said, another name or a second name or something to, really sort of differentiate yourself. I don't know what your recommendation would be for something like that when somebody
Yeah.
has a very common name.
I was saying if you're looking to just keep your personal pages private, it's almost like you don't want people to necessarily find you, right? Unless you want them to find you. So it could even be a nickname, like honestly, or it could be your initials and then your last name or something like that. All I'm saying is when people search your full name, what you want to try and create is that it leads people to the pages where you'd want them to stumble, like a potential customer or potential employer. You want them to go to the pages that show you in your professional light. So
Right.
adjusting your name could be like an easy way to do that.
Yep.
And I will shout out Elaine. So thank you very much for your comment here as well. Excellent point. Personal brand photography, fabulous. Get a good headshot.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Get a good photo of yourself. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Um, there's sometimes pop-ups at even events and conferences where it's like, hey, $60, we've got the screen set up here, we can do your headshots. Or just look and reach out to photographers in your area to see what their prices are like. Even a couple $100 for a personal branding, say 1 hour shoot, is highly valuable because those professional photos, it's a credibility thing, right?
Yeah.
When we see somebody who's got the photo with the nice lighting and they're sitting at their desk typing, we're like, okay, like this person's communicating some sort of executive presence. They're showing that they work.
Yeah,
They
I
got
couldn't agree more. It's so important, and it's funny because it does give people a sense of confidence and being comfortable putting themselves out there when you do have a photo that you're proud of and that somebody did your makeup and your hair and your lighting and you had a great photographer. I think that's really important, and I think people do matter, and that is an important part of the brand that it is important to invest in. And I think sometimes people think, well, you know what, I don't really need it. But when they have it, we've got some amazing local photographers in the Durham region that are, very reasonable. And so I think that if anybody's on this and you don't have something that you love, I'd say definitely invest in that. That's a great suggestion. The other thing is good graphic design, I think is super important too when you're putting yourself out there, and whether it's your business, photography and design are both key, I would think, and I'm sure you could speak on that too, Katie, in your business.
Yes,
You're
Canva
probably
subscriptions for all. If you're not already using Canva and if you're not already subscribed to the pro version, to me, it is such a godsend for entrepreneurs and business owners because, previously it was very hard to make things look good without having to, hire necessarily. Now,
hmm
I still think there's a place for hiring graphic designers. One of the
yeah.
things that I've done as I've been starting out is, of course, get your logo professionally designed, get your branding colors and guidelines professionally designed, get all of that put together. I would often work with a designer to even design things in Canva for me. Still do that to today. So maybe they'll create like the initial template that's like having good eye for design is absolutely an incredible talent and a skill, and we don't all have that. Canva helps make it easier, but
Right.
there's a complete difference between me designing something and say someone like Mel, who's on here, who I know is a graphic designer for Spark. Night and day difference between what we would create, right? So sometimes you can work with graphic designers who are willing to, and they can make almost like a template. So where this is helpful is if you're looking to make like social media branded images,
hmm
you can have your graphic designer make the template for you of maybe 2 or 3 different types of images in Canva. So that way you can easily edit it, right? Like that way it's just copying what's there. It looks amazing. You could just change out the color and change out the quote each week, and boom, it's going to look great. It's going to look branded. It's going to look good.
Oh, that's a great tip. I mean, I've been really lucky over the years. I always had graphic designers I worked with, but now starting out on my own business, Canva and Lavlet Ford saying Canva's the best. So that's a really really great tip. Thank you so much. And Solma's Piri saying, I've already posted a few articles on LinkedIn trying to write about personal events professionally. For example, as a person has impressed me, sort of I sometimes feel even like writing about lessons learned from failures. And I know I do that in my blog posts. And I think people really resonate that with that. It's not just about the successes, but for me, when I share the failures and just making myself vulnerable, because we all have them, I think it does draw people to you, and either to support you or to resonate, and together you can sort of collaborate on solutions, is what I've found. What would you say, Katie, on that
Yeah.
subject?
It's a really good question, Solmas. Thanks so much for sharing and asking. I think what I would say is what you're writing about. I'm talking purely from like a branding perspective, a professional sense. What
Hmm.
you're writing about should reinforce and tie back to what people might hire you for. Okay.
Right,
Why people
right.
might hire you for your services. And why I say this is because I think I even fell down this trap a little bit when I was starting out too. It was like I was just kind of sharing like general life advice, general this. Unless you're a life coach, unless you're a motivational speaker, unless there's like a very clear tie to like what kind of service or product are you selling from that message, not to say that it's not an important thing to share, but I'm saying from a professional branding standpoint, it's not helping you. Like that is
Hmm.
probably not helping you. What would be much more helpful is if you're writing about things or talking about things that you have some knowledge on, some unique knowledge on, that is somehow tied to the product or service that you're selling. Because I found that a lot of people, when they're starting out, can get caught in that trap of, trying to copy other models and other things that people are doing. But really, it's about how does this lead back to the business model that you're creating for yourself. So, nothing wrong with sharing maybe the odd article like that, like what I've learned from failures. I think that could be good. But I think more than that, if you could even tell me, Solmaz, we can do it right here. If there's a particular industry or expertise that you're focused on, it would be much more valuable to you to write majority of your articles about that topic and talk more about that topic, and then maybe have the odd like failure post or what I've learned from this in addition. Those are all helping to build your personal brand. I'm just helping you think even a little bit more strategically about how can it benefit you from a monetary perspective. And Elaine, I was wondering if you're a photographer, Elaine. So shout out to Elaine. She's linked herself here. If you're looking for some photography, personal branding sessions, that's awesome. We got the hook up there. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see we have so much talent here, that's for sure. So is there anything else you want to add, Katie, on branding and how-to tips for people that are just trying to pick up some tips on how to put themselves out there before we move on to any other subjects?
I know, I love the questions. So please, because I know that this can be, I hope that what I'm sharing is resonating and helpful to those here. And if there's more that I can share, please feel free to ask like a specific question.
Well, I
And
know it's helping me a lot, so thank you.
yeah, no
It's
problem.
it's really great to see. And so I guess unless there's any other points to touch on, I guess just thinking of for you personally, how do you stay so motivated and sort of uplifted? What are your sort of personal tips maybe you could share with people on how to sort of maintain balance in your life and balance your business and your personal life and all the things that you balance and show up looking gorgeous like you do,
Oh gosh.
and being so, sharing so much wisdom with all of us. How
Well,
do you
that's
do
very
it?
kind of you. Thank you. I mean, it's Mental Health Month, and I need to mention something about that because uh, I have recognized with more and more intensity every year just how important it is to openly talk about our mental health. And when we talk about how we're doing, not just recognizing the physical health, but recognizing how our mind's doing also. There's also a particular mental health considerations for entrepreneurs. When you are bringing something forward that doesn't yet exist, you are going to experience so much resistance. You're going to experience so many setbacks. You're going to be told no a bunch of times. You're going to have things that flop and that don't work out. And honestly, then in addition to all that, we're all human and we all have life events that happen to us, right? That can really throw us for a curve. So all of that can be so hard to keep motivated, can be so hard to keep positive, and can really bring us down if we're not careful about sort of protecting ourselves. And I don't mean to say that in a way to say that we can prevent every situation, because mental illness is a very real thing, and we will at all some point be in a low place in our lives where we are going to find it hard to get out of like a dark headspace. And for some people, mental illness is something that's like an ongoing struggle, and sometimes things that they have to live with their entire life. So it's about, what can we do? What are some of the habits, and what are some of the ways where we can really ensure that we're placing a priority on taking care of our mental health? And why this is even more important for me to share, Kerri, 2017, I experienced burnout. And this was a couple weeks on the couch, at my parents' house, didn't want to get up, felt completely hopeless. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. Like, it was low. And I consider myself to be a pretty like sunshiny, glass half full. And this was the opposite of that. Like, there was no light, there was no. So it really opened my eyes to just the line between being like okay and not okay is a lot more fine than we think. And it really only would take one, if not a handful of events to happen to us, or experiences to happen to us, that would take us from being okay to being not okay. And I developed a lot of compassion for myself during that time. Like, I recognized that maybe I had, maybe I was carrying some really unhealthy expectations of myself, and maybe I wasn't allowing myself to, prioritize well-being in the way that I would have liked to. And that's such a common thing, especially as entrepreneurs and business owners. Like, you can be running yourself around the clock,
and just pushing yourself. Maria's really supporting you in that, and saying, thank you for those comments, Maria. I know I can relate too. I think, a lot of entrepreneurs and like humans in general experience anxiety and experience depression and different challenges. And one of the things that my coach at my gym has said is, he needs to train for his well-being and for his mental health. And so it's not just about, going and training hard and like trying to look great. It's about a matter of survival. And it's about having, for me, if I don't train or do yoga, I'm just not always well. And it's for longevity as well. And so mental health is a huge part of that. So I think it's really important when we look at our schedules and we, try to figure out what we're going to do, is that we put ourselves in that schedule first. And that's like caring for yourself and having compassion, and knowing that you've got to set that aside. Because I think that for me it's a tool that I use daily, to ensure that I can deal with, the stresses of life. Because, and we've got to sort of be able to look at our time and be protective of it and decide what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. Because, as you've said, there's all these things we can do to build a brand and to build a business. But how do you balance it all? And so, I mean, I think you've talked about that a little bit. Do you have any other tips around mental health? And then maybe we can get to Elaine's question about when the next girl talk is.
Sure. I mean, so to that point, the one thing that I just wanted to communicate is, like, before the burnout that I experienced, and like, guys, like, it was like a couple weeks of that level of intensity. I can't describe to you. I was shaking. It was like nothing I had experienced. I couldn't eat. Like, it was horrible. And I told myself, like, I have to get out of this. Like, I have to figure out a way. And at that time, the smallest of actions felt like a lot.
Right.
But the smallest of actions are where you start. You start with the small little steps. What are the little things that I can do today? Go for a walk. Like, what can I do to kind of build myself back up piece by piece?
Yeah.
So during that time, and I just want to recommend it because it was something that I hadn't considered before. I didn't even realize I had stigma around therapy.
Yeah.
And now I have become such an advocate for therapy. And I don't think that we should be thinking about it as, oh, I go see a therapist when things are bad only. I think it's like having a coach or like having a trainer for
Mm-hmm.
your body. It's much like that. And it's really just a healthy space and a safe space for you to be able to talk about the good and the bad and the struggles and the fears. And we all have pasts. We all have our childhood experiences and trauma that
Right.
has happened in our life and that. And sometimes we don't recognize how those experiences are affecting the way that we're making decisions in our life and in our business. So I've become a really big advocate for this. I actually have a client that I've worked with first session that I do want to just shout out and promote because I actively have used their services too, and I think it's valuable. I've just linked it here. It's firstsession.com. It's like a video platform. You can go watch videos with a number of different therapists. They've got dozens and dozens of therapists, different backgrounds, ages, experiences, different pricing, and you actually get a real sense of who that person is before you actually book your session. You're not tied into any particular long-term plans. It's something that has been so valuable for me. And I think because entrepreneurship is in many ways lonely, like even if you have a
Mm-hmm.
great support network, it is
Yeah.
lonely. Like you're going through some of these challenges, you can take things personally. It's so healthy to have an outlet to express that. And I recommend that for all people. So that's one thing that I really
Yeah.
wanted to say.
Okay, great.
Um,
Thank you.
and tied to that is, yeah, you have to bake in things into your weeks for you. Okay. It looks different for everybody. For some people, they have different ways that they like to relax. Some people, it's like, I need time to like sit and read a book. For some people, it's like, I need to make time to watch my show. I need to make time to jog. I like yoga. So what I will say is like the things that bring you the joy and help you get centered are things that you need to make a priority in your week schedule. Not every day is going to be perfect, but that's why I kind of look at it as a week. Am I making room in here for myself? And then I want to encourage you to try things that you've never thought of trying before. Before
Yeah.
2017, I thought yoga was not a workout. I was that fluffy and competitive with like workouts. I was like boxing and running only. Boy, and my mom who actually teaches yoga and boxing and all these other things
Oh, cool.
told me you'll come to yoga at a time in your life where you need it the most. And she was
Mhm.
absolutely right. I was like, oh, what the hell? I feel so down right now with where I am in
Yeah.
2020. Let's try yoga. And it sent
Mhm.
me on this journey of getting calm and breathing. Like I didn't recognize that I was so unaware of how shallow my breaths were, of, how you get caught up in your day and you're sitting for long periods of time, you're not stretching. Like just
Mhm.
stretching, like it changed the whole way that I've like looked at my body. So, and meditation, Headspace is an excellent app. I use Headspace. You could even get like a 3 or 5 minute meditation, which honestly, truthfully, that's sometimes all I can do.
Yeah.
And I'll just like bake that into like an exercise session, or I'll like finish a yoga session or something like that with like a 3 to 5 minute like headspace meditation. These are some of
Mhm.
the tools that I use. I
Yeah.
run. I make exercise like for me, for all of us, moving your body not only like decreases your stress, but it helps clear your mind. And some of the
Mhm.
best ideas that I get, honestly, for my business, come after a jog or
Yeah.
something like that. Like you're able to make some connections and go from there. Okay, we got some amazing and lots of
Yeah,
comments.
there's some great comments
I,
here.
I was going to just address Elaine, and thanks so much for that. So, Girl Talk Empowerment Day is no longer, sadly, I ran Girl Talk Empowerment Day and Girl Talk Empowerment for 7 years. But after 2019, we actually closed the doors on that. And it's now a speakers bureau and girl talk that I run. So I'm so sorry to hear this about your daughters. I know our young people are struggling. COVID has emphasized the feeling of loneliness and isolation, everybody. So that's why like mental health more than ever, we need to be talking about it now. What can I say for your girls? I mean, Elaine, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I think we're going to put my contact details at the end. There's a couple organizations that I know that are great resources. So I'm happy to send those your way. Or even maybe recommend to your school having a speaker come in to talk about the subject. It could be a great way. I'd be up for it. A great way to kind of like be passing these messages to your daughters as well. So yeah, please feel free to reach out there. I'll let you, Kerri, I'll let you go through the other comments.
Yeah. Well, I just want to mention too, one tool, because I found it really challenging during lockdown too, that I couldn't go to my yoga studio. And since then, I think things have changed with studios. And recently on a trip to Montreal where Karen was there, Karen's got a chat and a note in the chat, which we'll talk about next. I discovered an amazing yoga app called Yoga Glow, and it's like $19.95 a month or something like that. And I actually get on WhatsApp every morning with two other girls, and we actually do the yoga together. So we're kind of we find the accountability within each other, that, we're always checking in. We have a moment to say hello. And so, when you are an entrepreneur, when you work from home, it's nice to have these little check-ins with other women. Like for me, I started a women's network in Durham that has well over 5,000 people. And when I see the connections that are made through that, and we started off with just sort of little networking events, but, really to surround yourself with people that are going to support you and uplift you is so important. And particularly doing this yoga together has been really valuable. So I would even say that to Elaine for your girls, that, if they get into a regular practice, that can be really, really helpful for supporting them. Ashley Ferguson, thanks for your comment. She's just sort of supporting you in that. And Karen says something I tried with a busy work life. What is she saying here is clean out the junk drawer. Yeah. Clean out the clutter. I call it feng shuiing my place. Actually, I went to visit a new client yesterday, and I noticed that the space around, in the business was just so cluttered with stuff that it's hard to think. And so for me, whether it's a business or at home, just decluttering and clearing out the junk and the garbage. And then also she's saying, I find sometimes we try to commit to too many things. So, clearing the space, being able to breathe, and then really just taking a look at your calendar and deciding, what can I do, and what am I going to push off to another time is so important in sort of creating that balance so that we do have the mental health,
Yes.
positive mental health.
And if I could add to that, one of the things that I really recommend from a project management and self-management standpoint is called calendar blocking. Some of you might be familiar with this concept, but essentially it's using, you can use pen and paper, which I do. It's part of my sort of gig.
Yeah, me
But
too.
also
Like always got a
having
pen.
a digital calendar, which for me is
Yeah.
Google Calendar. I like to, on my Sundays, map the week. And what I mean by that is, so obviously any of your meetings, any of your key sessions, things that you have going on, they're in there. But you also can start to bake in for yourself. I have a color. I use colors for different aspects of what I'm doing in different parts of my business. And you can make, the colors that make sense for you. But I have a color that's like personal, my
Oh,
personal.
that's a good idea.
So lunch, scheduling it. Where am I eating in the day? Where's my workout, in the day? And where is my, reading time? Whatever it is that you kind of want to fit in within your days. And I even extend it into my mornings and sometimes into my evenings. I don't believe that everything, like I'm not the kind of person who's like, oh, if it doesn't go to my schedule, I'm not like that at all. Trust me. But I have to have like a roadmap. So it doesn't always happen. Honestly, most days it doesn't happen perfectly the way that I have it listed. Most days it doesn't happen. But the fact that it's there gives it like a really good chance. So even if it doesn't happen in that order, I just move it around, right? If you just get your digital
Right.
calendar and you just kind of, okay, this is coming up here. So I just need to pull this here. Or I guess,
Yeah.
I woke up a little later than I expected. Workout's going to be this evening. Like, do you see what I mean? You kind of like, it's on there and it
Yeah.
gives me this map. And hey, I can't do something today. I'm going to move it over to the next day.
Yeah.
If there's any deadlines that you have coming up, I make it an all-day calendar notification, like what are the ways that you can kind of set yourself up for success and just kind of take off some of that stress? Calendar blocking has been a huge help for me.
That's a really great point. I mean, I do the same thing. I calendar block and certainly because there's always going to be more work to be done. But like when it comes to working out or training or doing my yoga, there's something daily that I do. But also eating, like the idea that like, okay, make sure you have your lunch. And it's surprising, like, a lot of workplaces where I've, spent time working with other people, I notice people say, well, I just didn't have time to eat today. And it's like, I mean, I've had the odd event day where I don't have time to eat, but I can't function if I don't eat. And it maintains your energy level throughout the day. And I think it's so important that, especially for women, we tend to, want to be caregivers for our children or the people in our lives. And we can so easily push that off. But I think that's such an important part of staying well and staying positive and happy and healthy, is setting that time aside for ourselves. Um, so anything else? Yeah, any other questions, guys? I know Karen's saying great session. Nagar, very informative. Does anybody have any other questions for Katie? Yeah, feel free to add your comments into the chat, and then afterward, at the end of the session, I think we've got a bit more time we can spend with everybody. But at the end of the session, we're going to have sort of a little bit of an opportunity for networking and conversation. So we'll be able to do that as well. But I thought I'd spend a little bit more time just talking about how you sell yourself when you're actually selling to clients. Do you have any tips on that for people that are, I mean, obviously we need to think about the content we're putting out and that we're actually putting out content that's going to support whatever product or service that we have to offer. But Katie, are there any tips or any more information you can share with people that are looking at their business and thinking, how do I generate more sales? How do I generate more revenue or more profile for my company?
Yes. One of the things that I wish I did a lot sooner is, I mean, it sounds kind of sad to say it like this, but it's like I wish I had have listened to feedback a little bit more. And what I mean is when you put your product out and you're pumping it out or your service and you're trying to sell it and you're marketing it, you start to get feedback. And sometimes that feedback is crickets, right? Like sometimes that
Yeah.
feedback is it's not taking off. You're not getting sales coming through. Yeah, and
Mhm.
there could be many reasons for that. But I think, at times, I think it's one of my strongest qualities. I think it's also one of the things that can be a negative quality for me is that I'm quite stubborn. And so if I'm convinced that I, have this great idea, like I'm going to just keep pushing with this idea. And I think when I look
Yeah.
back, there are ideas that I should have let go of a little bit sooner. And it's not to like say that you're totally letting go of it, but it's back to that point, which I said is being nimble. And it's funny because in some ways I'm very stubborn, but I can also be quite nimble. And I want to get to nimble more quickly, which is if it's not this, like what is the feedback that I'm getting? So for instance, just to paint like a real world example, like Girl Talk Empowerment, I ran as a social enterprise, a social business for no other reason than I wanted to run a business and it was an easy way of doing the work that we did without having to go through like a registered charity, which just felt like a lot of paperwork and maintenance and all sort of stuff. And quite frankly, I just didn't see myself running a charity. I always wanted it to be a business. But really the model that we were doing with Girl Talk was much more like a nonprofit model than it was a for-profit one. It was a lot of like philanthropy work that I was doing really
Right.
through
Yeah.
that. But one thing that was working during that time, and it took me a while, like maybe 5 years in, we started representing myself and 2 other women on our website as speakers. We were getting requests for speakers. And so the wheels like didn't turn enough until like later, much later, where, you know, it was so hard in some ways to get the business model moving in some elements of Girl Talk Empowerment. But there was this one area where it was like, well, this is where, you know, people are compensating us to have our speakers come out. And there was an interest for this. So it took me time to recognize, hence why we're now running the Girl Talk Speakers Bureau, right? And
That's great. I love your story about how that kind of came about. And, you know, it's funny, as entrepreneurs, we tend to like have an idea and you're like clinging on to that idea, like, you know, I'm going to make this happen. And then, but sometimes you just have to let go and kind of go with what is appearing in front of you and where the energy is, and knowing sort of where to follow that energy along. And as Kaylee's saying, you know, how to be a magnet for opportunities. So, you know, being aware of where that energy is coming from in terms of that magnetic force, where do I need to go? Where do I need to put my energy next? That's, I think, an interesting subject.
Kerri, my laptop is at like 3%. I'm going to just run and grab the charger, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give me one sec.
Absolutely. And on, you know, I've got to thank Kaylee, because she introduced me to Hop On, and I've had to sort of get over a little bit of my technological challenges. And for me, I think that's been a bit of a stumbling point, where I think, okay, well, how am I going to you know, do certain things in life when technology is limiting me? But I think that's one of the things where, when you look at what the pain points are in life, that's what you want to move toward. And so I think that's just something that has been an opportunity for growth for me. And so I just thought I would mention that, because if there's any of you that have questions about, you know, the pain points. Oh, and I think, so sorry, Solmaz has another comment here. Frequently I post content like a webinar poster, etc., and get so many simple questions like, what is the time in my local area, or is it paid? Those are honestly frustrating sort of questions, and it's sort of a little bit too time consuming. I feel like you don't want to let down your audience. How do you deal with that? And the fact that as a CEO and ambassador for 2 major societies, I'm too busy. So really interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think I'll throw that over to you to answer that, Katie. I mean, I have my comments too, but.
Yeah, I mean, okay, couple ideas. As you're growing your business, and you want to try and make sure that you're focusing on the right things and using your time on the right things. And so if you're at a point, Solmaz, where it's like you have you know, regular revenue coming through, and you're in a place where you could almost like hire an administrative person to help you, even part-time, even as a contract, even just try it for 3 or 6 months to start, I would recommend doing that. I have even gotten students and trained students before to help with that. And maybe it's like, you know, 5 to 10 hours a week, and they can be doing some of your admin to kind of help you out a little bit more. That's one idea. If you're not in a place where you have regular sort of stable revenue coming through, then perhaps you could look at getting an intern to help you. And I've done situations before where I think it's always nice to offer like an honorarium. Maybe it's like, you know, a gift card or something that they get each month as a thank you for their work. You know, I think it's obviously important to try and get these people to move to paid positions. I'm a really big advocate for that. But sometimes when you're starting out, like that could be a really great way of doing that. And I would also say, if there's ways that you can help yourself when you post about the event, making sure the details are all extremely clear. Maybe you could automatically include in your caption. I'm sure there's websites out there where it's like date and time converter, you know, so somebody just plugs in the time of one area and it'll automatically like tell you what it is. I'm sure there's a site. Include that link. Hey, if you want to know what time it is in your zone, here's the link. These are just some like really simple ways. You could have an FAQ section to the event. easy ways to kind of help yourself a bit.
Those are great tips. There's one more question on branding because it seems like that's something people are really, I know we spent a lot of time on that, but Lavlet Ford is saying for personal branding, I'm wondering what would be the top 3 tips or suggestions to just get people started?
I know, yeah.
Like if you're at the
Yeah,
very beginning,
were you here? Yeah, I hope you were here. If you weren't here, that's okay. I'll just probably be
like
repeating
top 3, like top tips, like high level maybe.
like yeah, top tips, high level. Um, I would say like make a list of 5 words or phrases that you want your personal brand to be known for.
Oh,
That's what I
cool.
would.
That's great. That's a great tip.
What are the types of things that you when people think of you, you want them to think of this, right?
Okay.
Um, and that helps you because those kind of become your keywords, and they can also kind of become your content pillars.
I'm writing
So
that down.
So once you have an idea of what those content pillars are, it gives you a lot of direction about what type of things to talk about, what your keynote topics should be if you're looking to speak, what you should be pitching yourself to if you're pitching for a podcast, what articles you should be writing about or commenting on LinkedIn. Like having those sort of words, I'd say is like a really good starting point.
Okay.
Um, I would also say get yourself a branding shoot. We had Elaine recommend and advertise her services here, which is awesome. So check her out. And I would say clean up your LinkedIn by adding in details and add in links, go above and beyond to put as much detail as possible and examples of your work. Those would be the places that I would start.
Those are brilliant. Those are great. I really appreciate that. I'm learning a lot on this, and I'm so grateful to be able to have this discussion with you. Now, do you mind sharing a little bit more about your Speakers Bureau and how do people get sort of connected with it? What kind of work do you do representing the speakers, and what kinds of organizations do you serve?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm very like happily blessed to say it is a very busy season right now. And both MicDrop Marketing and Girl Talk Speakers Bureau are growing and growing quite rapidly. We're signing on new and new clients each month. I just signed my first 2 US clients this month, which I'm so excited
Congratulations.
about. Thank you. From Girl Talk's perspective on our bureau, we're actually going to be, this is the first place that I'm really publicly saying this, we're going to be slightly rebranding. We're so much more than a speakers bureau already. We're much more of a talent bureau, and we're doing public relations and influencer relations and speaking relations and so much more for the women who we represent. And we're going to be adjusting to that. I'm going to be announcing probably in the next week that I've just signed a reality TV star from Love is Blind to our roster, which I'm really excited about.
Cool.
And she actually brought me on as her manager. So it's an even more kind of involved role in terms of overseeing her brand. Then on the MicDrop marketing front, we again we represent clients. Like, I mean, we're working in a wide different variety of industries, and we also help personal brands for men and women. And so one of our upcoming contracts for 2022 is planning a whole book tour and speaking launch campaign for a high profile entrepreneur from Texas.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm really excited to sort of be leading that campaign. So in my mind, to Kaylee's question, I'm just so thrilled, so thankful. I'm getting married next month.
I was going to say that. I didn't know how public that was, but that's pretty exciting when you've got all
Guys, I
this
didn't even get my
happening.
ring on this morning. It just didn't happen. But yeah.
Congratulations. So much to celebrate. You deserve this. You've put so much out into the world. You've supported so many young women. You've created so much, and
Thanks,
it's
Kerri.
wonderful to see somebody like you being celebrated, and the opportunities coming your way because you put the energy out there and you work so hard. So congratulations. Everybody's saying
That's
congratulations.
so
So
nice. Thank you
what's
so
your wedding
much.
date?
Saturday, November 27th.
Oh, wow.
We got engaged like 3 months ago. So we're basically pulling off like in 4 months, like we're having a wedding and doing all the
Oh,
things while we're in
that's
this
so
period of growth.
good.
So I'm like leaning in, and I am, one of the things that I think is so important to say, and Brene Brown, if you're not familiar with her work,
Love
and
her work. Yeah.
yeah, like excellent books, talks a lot about vulnerability and finding strength in that. But I mean, one of the things that she says is that joy is one of the most vulnerable human emotions. It's actually really hard for us to feel joy because we're bogged down with so much anxiety and stress and worry and fears. And it's really easy to get kind of caught up in that. And I find myself in that pattern sometimes too. So I'm trying to lean into the joy and allow myself to be happy and allow myself to just, life brings us so many different things, and they're not all going to be wonderful experiences. We're going to have tough times, but when we're in those times where it is great and it is positive and things are moving and building, celebrate that. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. And we're just shouting out your book, She Rises, Uplifting World Words for Girls. And how do people get your book? Is that the link right there?
Yeah, I
Right
think
from your website? That's the best place to order
exactly.
from?
That's the
It
best place.
sounds like a great gift for anybody. With Christmas coming, I think, the best gifts I've ever received have been books from friends that care. And because it can be just one idea that you take away from that. And I mean, on the topic of joy, I think we all strive to have joy. And then, like you said, sometimes when it appears, it's almost a little bit challenging. But one of the things that I've been learning, and I've been taking a course in Kabbalah, is the idea that when things happen to you that are challenging in life, to welcome those too, and realize that those are opportunities for personal growth. The pain, and I think we were mentioning that, I mentioned it a little bit when you stepped away to get your power cord, but I think those are things we also need to celebrate the fact that the universe is showing up this way, because so maybe you didn't get that one client that you wanted to land. Maybe that wasn't meant to be. Maybe that wasn't going to resonate. Maybe it wasn't going to work with your business. So sometimes we have to look at the pain or the challenge as an opportunity, because it's an opportunity for growth and learning. And so I just thought I would mention that, because, and Maria's saying we need joy in life, work, and every domain. Absolutely, Maria. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm a Christian, and honestly, faith has been such a key component of getting through difficult times for me. Also, because just even my faith teaches that there is going to be struggle. Like that is like a promised, guaranteed thing. But it's how do we be the light in the world in the middle of struggle and darkness, and that
Hmm.
just speaks to me. That message, that metaphor speaks to me, and so I think we all need to, like, every human being seeks transcendence of some sort, right? And regardless of what our faith beliefs are, we seek that, and kind of that understanding that there's a greater vision and purpose for our lives. And
Hmm.
for me, that brings me back to center. Without that focus, I feel like it would be really hard to be able to navigate life, because
Hmm.
it can be challenging.
It's funny because I don't know if the embassy is still your church, but I'm Jewish, but I go to Buddhist temples, I study Kabbalah, I go to see Pastor Doug when I need help. And so I welcome all religions and backgrounds, because I think it's the same essence that comes through all of them. But that's a place that I've shown up to at the most challenging of times, and the people come around you and support you. And so I think that brings us strength. It really does. And when you are able to realize that there is a greater intelligence around us, and sometimes we do need to just let go. I'm actually reading a great book called Letting Go, and it's and part of it is just letting go and letting God. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Excellent. So, any other questions for Katie? I think we've got a few more minutes left, guys, and then we're going to wrap up and we're going to get into the networking portion of this session. And so, if anybody has any last questions, or Katie, if you have any final comments for us.
I'm just so excited to have been part of this. I'm usually on the other side of this. It was fun to actually be in the guest seat today and get to answer your questions, Kerri, and of course the questions of the audience here. So thanks so much to you, to Spark Center, to Launch Lab, to all of our sponsors, and to everybody who's on here today for all the love and kindness and support that you're bringing to. It's a good feel good part to this Thursday.
Oh, it sure is. What a great way to start this day. I just feel so I've been writing things down the whole time, and I've learned so much, and it just shows that it doesn't matter what stage you are in your career, that there's always opportunities for growth. And for me, I'm always learning, and I'm learning from, you never know where you're going to learn from when you just show up. And Sue, thanks for the applause. I think Katie was so fantastic. And for anybody who needs help with LinkedIn or website stuff, Sue Sutcliffe is the queen of that. She is always helping me out, and she's so generous with her time and her amazing skills. So I just want to say thank you, Katie, for everything you've shared. I really think I need to be your client because I probably need more help where this came from. So thank you so much. So I think we've got a couple more minutes if there's anything else we'd like to add, and then we can probably go into the networking portion, and hopefully you guys will stick around and we'll have some more questions that can be answered or chatting.
You guys are really kind in the comments. Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Are you feeling the love, Katie?
I love it. I'm gonna get emotional here in a second.
It's so nice. You have so much. You're such a beautiful, bright light. We're so lucky to have you in our midst. That's for sure.
Thank you.
So Maria's going to step out for the networking. So unless there's anything else, I just want to say thank you so much, Katie, and to Spark Center for letting me be a part of this conversation. I've learned a ton this morning, and I'm so grateful. And Katie, I look forward to seeing you continue to shine and grow in your career. And it's wonderful to see how much you've accomplished. So it's been a real blessing to have this time with you.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Thank
So
you so much.
excellent. Well, thank you so much. And I think then we'll sort of have a little applause for Katie. And I just want to mention again that Startup Grind was brought to you by Spark Center in partnership with Launch Lab. Be sure to stay tuned to Spark Center's social pages for details to register for the next Startup Grind, which is Thursday, November the 25th. And now it's actually time for the networking. So if you wish to join us, please stick around. And what you can do is you can navigate to this section by clicking on the icon on the left-hand side of your screen. And you'll be paired up with one person at a time for 3 minutes. And you can use this time to get to know each other and chat and exchange contact information, maybe social information. And you'll have an opportunity as well to extend the session if you'd like. Once the time is up, press ready, and Hopin will automatically move you to the next person. So it's kind of like a speed dating option. So you can click the connect button if you'd like to virtually exchange business cards and add that person to your network. So I'm really looking forward to connecting with all of you in the networking session. And I just want to say thank you so much. And I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thanks again to Spark Center for having me join you for this wonderful discussion with Katie this morning. It was fantastic and lovely to see all of you. We'll see you very soon in networking.